In Civilization VI, leaders are supposed to represent the apex of their specific empire, but that's not always the case, as in Civ VI, there are some leaders where you wonder why they were even added in the first place, when their crowning achievement was getting goatseed a little slower than others from the same time period. Remember, this is about leaders and not civs, and let me know down below in the comments which leaders you think shouldn't be in Civ 6. Before we get started, I want to talk about two honorable mentions, two leaders that aren't terrible choices, but maybe not the top choice of their respective civilizations. And the first one is Catherine of France. In 2016, you couldn't find a harder erection than the hate boner everyone had for Catherine as the leader. You have one of the most stacked empires in history with 18 Henrys, 17 Charles, 24 Louis, and 1 Napoleon, looking like a stat line LeBron would post in his prime. And that's what makes Catherine an honorable mention. She was actually pretty good, as her period had destabilization that she handled pretty well, being Queen Mother for about 3 kings. It isn't her achievements that really held her back, it's the fact that France is one of the most stacked rosters, and picking Catherine is like picking Canada for a culture win. I mean, it's not bad, but you could have done a little better. At the number 3 slot, we got Saladin of Arabia, and I'm not talking about that healthy meal to help you lose weight. Saladin was a Kurd who ruled over Egypt. Now, I understand why he rules Arabia as one of the most famous Muslim leaders of all time who ended up dropping 50 in the Crusades. But at this point, the Mamluk dynasty was pretty much just Egypt, and if you are going to put an Arabian leader, you could have picked someone from the Umayyad dynasty, which was arguably Islam's golden age, as they controlled everything from Iberia to the west, all the way through to Persia in the east. Now, Saladin overall was a good leader, don't get me wrong, but he was nowhere near Islam's golden age peak. And you might be thinking, this is about Arabia, not Islam, thinking you really did something, even though it's pretty much the same thing. But okay, Saladin ended up ruling Egypt, the Mamluk dynasty based in Egypt, who had some territories in Arabia. So my point still stands. Overall, there were a lot of better leaders that you could have picked, even dynasties, as the Mamluks are probably one of the lower tier ones. They could have chosen for Arabia, as the reason Saladin was chosen is because he's the most famous, kind of like Cleopatra. This wasn't really Civ style before Civ 6, so it's kind of a wonder how he was even chosen in the first place. And now for the beginning of the worst option, starting with Hojo Tokimune of Japan. This man was shogun during the Mongolian invasion of Japan and did end up rebelling them, or should I say, the rain did. Yeah, Hojo didn't do jack shit, even though he took credit for the typhoon that wiped out the Mongol invasion fleet. The only thing he did other than that was spread Buddhism to Japan, which, I mean, come on, we got some monsters in Japanese history like Meiji, who literally 4-year planned Japan without causing millions of death, which some thought was impossible, and pulled them from a rural society all the way to a modern superpower. Imagine someone went to a random village in the middle of Africa where they just eat malaria-infested water and shit, and they turned them into a modern country on par with the United States. Yeah, Hojo did about as much for Japan as some weebs who visited once or twice. Jack fucking all. At the number 4 spot, we got Cleopatra, who's only in this game because she banged Caesar. Let's be honest. She did literally nothing for Egypt, who is the oldest civilization we have written record of. I mean, damn. Imagine being immortalized because you fucked someone. That's like 2,000 years from now, Riley Reid becomes the most popular person from our generation because she was the top girl on a certain platform, I can't say, in fear of Susan's retaliation. The thing she really did is she became co-ruler with her brother before Caesar came to Egypt, took over Alexandria, and they were just sieged together, and long story short, her brother ended up dying. She ended up having the thing with Caesar, and after Caesar died, she supplied Mark Antony, who proceeded to get put on a custom-made t-shirt by Augustus, and then she killed herself. Yeah, she really didn't do anything for Egypt, more so she was a large part of Roman history, and that's probably why she was here, because of being the most well-known Egyptian, because she did have sexual relations with that one man. Now, despite the premise of this video, every Civ up to this point, every leader was probably, you know, they weren't the worst option, right? There were worse options, and you could see why they were picked, whether it was because of their cultural significance or because of the fact that, they were pretty solid leaders in their own right, just maybe not the top creme de la creme. This is about to change. Ambiorix is arguably the most laughable leader on this list. You want to know what he did? He was Caesar's fleshlight. I'm not even joking. That was literally the job description. Pretty much his tribe was starving because the Romans used an old Soviet tradition and stole their food to feed their troops on the border, and this led to Ambiorix leading a Belgian uprising in that province of Rome and ended up killing some Romans. After that, Julius Caesar was told what happened, marched to Belgium, and genocided, yes, genocided every one of Ambiorix's tribe members. The only, and I repeat, the only thing he did was make Caesar mad, who made his tribe go the way of the dodo bird. So like I said, he was Caesar's fleshlight. He apparently escaped with what remained of his army, never to be seen again. So he isn't even like a martyr like Joan of Arc in Civ III, which you could, sort of make the cultural significance type of argument like with Cleopatra. So really just hold this fat L at that point. The only reason he's known at all in history is because after Belgium gained their independence, they were looking for someone to idolize, get that nationalistic fervor up and running, and they couldn't find anyone. So they just picked Ambiorix because he had the balls to take on Rome, which, that's pretty much how we even know about him, so case closed. And finally, we have the worst of the bunch, the only leader aside from Ambiorix, who you could argue was actually terrible for their civ, and by far the worst leader in the entire game, Christina of Sweden. Christina was really the second ruler of the Swedish Empire, and this is important. Empires usually rise to a genius, whether diplomatically like the Austrians, militarily like the Romans, or administratively like the British, and Sweden was on that militaristic path. Gustavus Adolphus said hop on board as he carried Sweden to prominence due to his military genius, mainly due to him being a TheCivLifeR subscriber, the best humanity has to offer. He was literally Napoleon before Napoleon, and so the Alps had to make sure he died after he wiped out half the member states of the HRE. Sweden afterwards was in a weird position. If Adolphus lived for another 20 years, Sweden would be a superpower equivalent to Prussia, so they needed at least another string of solid leaders until another great one could come to fruition. And Christina, she was dog shit. She immediately made peace at any cost in the 30 Years' War, which no one wanted but her, and they got shafted in the peace process. Think Italy after World War I, who was promised a lot more than they actually got. Finally, she wasted so much of Sweden's treasury that the country never recovered, and after securing as much money and palaces as she could, she abdicated the throne and ran to Italy, where she lived the rest of her life watching opera. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, what? She was literally the OG girlfriend who spent all your money and left you after you went broke. Sweden never recovered from this, and until recently, most Swedes viewed her as a traitor. She is the one leader in this game who actively worsened the prospects of her empire after having it handed to her on a gold-laden platter by her dad. And that is why she's at number 1, and as a sort of fun fact, the leaders after her were, for the most part, pretty good. Kind of ironic how she single-handedly fucked up the Swedish Empire. Comment your thoughts on the worst and best leaders in Civilization VI down below, and leave a like and subscribe to not miss out on future content. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.